Hello, I'm Alan Henderson, the Executive Director of NATS, and I want to welcome you to our discussion today titled On the Horizon, a look ahead for independent studios in the second half of 2021. This is the last webinar in our winter series of webinars, and I want to encourage you to explore our recent webinars here on this YouTube channel. I especially want to draw your attention to our webinar entitled COVID Relief Act 2 and the Singing Community, which we recorded a few weeks ago. There is funding in the latest relief bill for small businesses like yours, independent contractors, gig workers, and others. If you were frustrated last spring, as many were, with relief in trying to seek relief funding, I urge you to try again, as some of the barriers you faced last spring are removed, I guess you could say, hopefully, in this round of funding. In this webinar, we walk you through the application process for the PPP and provide details about other funding sources that might be available to you in the Relief Act. Also, I want to remind you, if you're with us today and you're not a member of the National Association of Teachers of Singing, I hope you'll visit us at nats.org and find out more about joining this professional community of voice professionals. One of the most pleasurable jobs I have at NATS is getting to know the work of our colleagues all around the world. And today we've brought together a stellar group of colleagues to lead our discussion and take your questions as well. Feel free to enter your questions in the comments field on your screen, and we'll do our best to weave them into our conversation today. First of all, some brief introductions of our panel. Cynthia Vaughn is owner of Magnolia Music Studio in Richland, Washington, neighborhood music school that has expanded to include national and international faculty and students since pivoting to online lessons in the pandemic. She is also the independent voices editor for the NATS publication Internos. Dana Lentini, after cultivating techniques as a singer, voice teacher, and children's choir director, Dana combined her experience to create Born to Sing Kids, a program designed to nurture the development of beginning singers. She helps teachers build their own successful studios and empowers young singers to explore healthy vocal techniques through a systematic approach. And her new book, Teaching the Child Singer, Pediatric Pedagogy for ages 5 through 13, is available from Hal Leonard Publishing. That is a tongue twister. Melissa Cross, her 2005 book, The Zen of Screaming, set the world of teaching rock and metal singers on fire. Before that time, and certainly since, she has been the queen of teaching scream and is in high demand as a teacher of leading singers around the world, in addition to training teachers. Kelly Himes has a thriving and stylistically diverse studio in the Dallas area, in addition to serving as a voice teacher at several high schools in the area. She's also a speech language pathologist and is affiliated with the UTSW Voice Clinic in Dallas. Amy Canchola is on the voice faculty at Highland Park High School and maintains an independent studio online and in Garland, Texas. She has focused her research on the work of Mexican-American composer Maria Griever and is a champion of the music of Latin women. With studios in Florida and New York City, Jason Ferrante is a voice teacher for the Young Artist programs at Wolf Trap, Minnesota, Nashville, Kentucky, Pensacola Operas, and the Michigan Opera Theater. He has a dual career on stage and in the studio, singing opera and concert internationally, while also teaching professional singers for over 20 years. Anna Lantry is a singer and voice coach based in Vancouver, Washington. She's the director of True Voice Lessons, LLC, a multi-state company offering in-person and online voice and music lessons. Since 2013, she has offered voice instruction to clients all over the world in these areas: transgender voice coaching, voice feminization or masculinization, singing both classical and contemporary, voice acting, public speaking, and metal screening. She also serves on the advocacy committee for NATS. When Kimberli Render is not performing on stages, she can usually be found in a music classroom, teaching in her private studio, or working with youth in some capacity or another. She just made her off-Broadway debut in the Lincoln Center Theater premiere of Intimate Apparel by Ricky Ian Gordon. And in the fall of 2019, she made her Metropolitan Opera debut as a featured chorus soloist in the Grammy-nominated cast of Porgy and Bess, which I was fortunate to see. So that is our wonderful panel today. We're so appreciative of you bringing your expertise to all of us today. So let's start. Let's just talk a little bit for a few minutes about what the pandemic has taught us about our industry and about our part of the industry as independent teachers. Who wants to go first? How about Dana?
Oh, thanks, Alan, and thanks for that great introduction. Such a wonderful panel of fellow teachers. I'm so honored to be here. I think for me, the pandemic has taught me and my students how resilient we are and how creative we are, because we have just really developed just new ways of doing things. And it's so exciting. When we first were going to go online, right, for all of us, it happened kind of like overnight. And so I think it was shocking. I remember one of the emails I sent, like a Zoom link. I said, hi, here's a Zoom link for your lessons tomorrow. And one of the parents kind of shot back like, oh, what, we're going online? It's like, yeah, I don't think we have much choice. And so, you know, we've continually are developing new ways and new creative ways of making it work, you know, from trying to host our recitals and making, you know, something we've never done before, and we couldn't even have thought of it, is these compilation videos where we kind of have everybody, you know, record singing and kind of layering them. And that was, you know, that was something really fun that we did last spring. And for my families, it was a safe place for them right from the beginning, because all of their activities stopped, right? The dance classes, the soccer. Last spring, everything just came to a halt, and they were trying to figure out school. But, you know, we just kind of like didn't even have a bump in the road. We just kept going. And I think all of my singing families really were very appreciative of having that safe space where we just continued our routine. So for us, it was a resilient, creative, wonderful experience.
Great. Jason?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the intro, Alan. Isn't it nice to spend 90 minutes in front of the screen and it not be our usual on-screen work? I'll tell you, one of the things that's happened for me personally is that my work has generally been exclusively with professional opera singers who now are all equalized in unemployment. And what that's done has really forced us to amplify the ethics of studying voice. That things that potential career success hasn't canceled. The fact that, okay, this is what I have. This is the highlight of my week, is this gardening that I'm doing. So what it's done is it's forced me, but also singers who I think haven't spent as much time recently with their hands in the dirt getting into things, to organize and realize that with all of the apologies that have come in our industry because of the shutdown, your throat doesn't know that it's happened, you know, and your heart and your mind have, but a year goes by and you have more rings around your vocal tree, and it's forced you to realize that you can't take that time off. And I would say the greatest thing, or maybe it's just the thing that I'm dealing with right now and I'm projecting onto all of you, is that this acceptance that diligent, hard, athletic work on your voice can happen while you're depressed and while you're in a bad mood. You can do both. So I've been forced to help singers accept the fact that they're allowed to do both. And it's been so great because it's made me have to clarify information. And it's actually been quite rewarding to find an escape in the study part of it, not just in the glamorous side of it, which we all know isn't really that glamorous anyway. But yeah, and it's been nice to see professional singers get back to basics. It's been really wonderful. Yeah.
Good. Cynthia.
I think it's terrific to be here. This is just wonderful. But one of the things that the pandemic has taught me or taught us is that things can change suddenly. And previously, in a lot of cases, people taught voice the way their teachers had taught voice, the way their teachers had taught voice. We're not in an industry that has had a lot of change. We've been kind of mired in tradition, and that's good in a lot of ways, but it kept us in our comfortable place. And then all of a sudden, everything changed. And another thing that I thought of when you asked this question is that we may consider the arts essential, but boy, did I learn that a lot of people don't, and it's not even on their radar. And so there were a lot of industries that there was a lot of money being thrown at, airline industries, just to pick one. And the arts community was like, wait, we're over here. What about all of these unemployed artists who made their full-time living singing, dancing, touring, recording? And that's gone. And I just felt like we were just off in a little dark corner somewhere. So hopefully that's changing now. And I really appreciate Alan letting us know about the funding that is now available, and we might be able to get a hold of it. But yeah, I think mostly it's just how quickly things change.
Mm-hmm. Great. Melissa. How about you, Melissa?
Hi. Okay. So this is an interesting question because music didn't stop and fans didn't stop and the music industry did not stop. So I was lucky. Oh, and by the way, thank you for your introduction. I forgot about that, but I'm just so interested in this conversation. The music is changing a little bit as a result of this because people need to pull it off live now. There's been a lot of, sort of hacks where, if you have a cold, there's tracks and, this is not going to happen anymore because now everybody is online and they're doing kind of fan to artist interactions that involve their singing. They're clean singing. So I have multiple students that really started to work on a more, I want to say, I don't like the word legit, but they started to not depend on the sort of camouflage of effects and stage and studio, and a more organic presentation was required. So I think that is, I think the music is going to change a little bit too, because we've been having huge arena rock kind of shows since the 70s and 80s, maybe 60s too. But the big, massive group of people enjoying music together is not going to happen in 2021 in a big way. I mean, I think that they're going to start the tours towards the end of 2021. There are a few brave people that think that they're going to, be at a festival in June in Europe, and that's possible. But I feel that everyone is still hunkered down and trying to develop a fan to artist relationship with their voices. And so I think that our ability to adapt is our survival. And I think we've done really well. I really do. I'm lucky that I was already online a year before this happened. And I am surprised that we have a vaccine already, but we still can't conquer that latency thing. If they can do a vaccine, why can't we deal with this latency? That's all I have to say. I'm enjoying this conversation very much.
Kelly.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for the conversation. I think the thing that has been surprising to me in an ongoing manner is the willingness of my students just to keep jumping in with the next thing. Um, when the pandemic started and it was just like, wow, here we are. The first thing I had to do was regroup because I'd never taught online before. And figure out, okay, how are we going to do this? And I published a little graphic that said Himes online starting this date. And that was my 10 days to figure this out because I was one of those that was dragged kicking and screaming into the online event. This was going to last 2 weeks and the pandemic was going to be over and we were going back to our lives. It didn't happen that way. So I gave myself 10 days to figure it out and forward we went. I barely have lost at that point any students that just couldn't make the leap. And then I hooked us up with someone who was able to help my students get better technology. And at every step, when I was able to identify a need and a solution, I have just been humbled and awestruck at my students and families' willingness to walk that path with me and for them to continue to access the best offering that we can come up with to keep ourselves going. There was a company in this area that also keeps offering online virtual festivals so that the students can, I do mostly high schoolers. Most of my gigging pros aren't gigging, so they're not engaged in lessons right now. But my high schoolers are able to enter festivals that may be classical or pop or musical theater, or my singing actors are doing monologues and combinations. And there's a company in the area that's doing many of these things and able to allow these kids to stay engaged in that. And again, the willingness of them to figure out how to do the quality videos and how to produce that and send me the drafts for the feedback. And just to continue to go forward, much as Jason said, doing that raw work day to day, enhancing their basic skills and producing it themselves in ways that no one would have thought of a year ago for a bunch of teenagers on blank walls to do on their own has just been such an interesting experience. I am anxious for the days that we get to go back live because that will be my preference. I think that I will always maintain a complement of my studio that offers an online availability, either for students that I have picked up that are farther away or for that day that you're a little sick or whatever. But I am confident that through this willingness and through this time, we are all learning skills. Then in the next 3, 5, 10 years, we will have in play and in our tool basket that we don't even realize now. That our students, whether we're working at the high school level or the middle school level or university or our opera singing adults, we are all learning skills that will come into play in our next decade and more that we don't even realize that we have learned and adapted to right now. And that continuing willingness to build these skills and move forward at every turn is just kind of astounding to watch some days.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Kimberli.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. This is a great conversation and I'm honored to be a part of it. And just piggybacking off of what Kelly just mentioned, even a lot of my experience has been in the public school setting as well. And the idea that students are gaining something now, there's a lot that they're missing, obviously, being in the classroom, but there is something to be said about what they're gaining in these skills and flexibility and learning how to adapt so quickly. I think it's really a gift if we look at it that way. The other thing that I've been thinking about hearing, I agree with everybody and the flexibility and Melissa, the way the music is going to change, things like that. The thing that became abundantly clear for me is how human we are and how emotionally taxing it was in the beginning. As Jason mentioned, just to sing, even for myself as a singer, there was a while and I was as you mentioned, off Broadway. So I was in 8 performances a week. So I kind of looked at it like, oh, this will be a nice 3-week vacation and I can get some rest. And then when I realized that it was going to be much longer, I thought, okay, well, this is kind of sad. And then it just continued. And it took a while for me to get back into the desire to sing. And then when I did want to sing, I didn't want to sing opera and I didn't want to sing classical music. I went back to what I originally started singing, which was gospel music. And I found that, yes, Melissa. And I found that a lot of my friends felt the same way. It was like I went back to the root of who I am as a musician and what made me fall in love with music in the first place. And I started to notice that with my students as the year went on. I actually picked up more students during the pandemic because I had people that were like, yeah, I just miss singing. I haven't been doing it. I realized in this time that it's a hobby that I let go and I'm interested in just picking it back up. And I think we realize as a society that, you know, there is more to the machine, like more to life than the machine of working and working and working, that we want to enjoy things, that there are desires that we have, you know, outside of just success of work. And so I'm really thankful for the humanity, I think, that has been exposed during this time, that we need each other, we need connection, we need the arts, we need all of these things to survive. I mean, as Cynthia said, you know, we're not seen as essential. However, everyone knows if there was no Netflix, if there was no Apple Music or Spotify or any of those things available, this would have been a much different pandemic, you know, and us being at home. So I'm really thankful for that part of it, the humanity that has been realized during this time.
Great. Hannah.
Good morning. Thanks for the introduction and for having me. I almost feel like the court jester that got let in the wrong room on accident, but great to be here. I think what the pandemic has taught us is quite a few things, actually. First one is we knew it was important to have an online presence before, but with Black Swan events like a pandemic, how much you need to know about a certain subject matter can flip really fast. So I feel like we've had to learn basically a whole new college degree's worth of knowledge about having an online presence, and I've hired a whole team to help me with that. And so at this point, while it was important before to have a good website and good social media and interact with your people, it would make me feel like I didn't have a pulse, professionally speaking, now if I didn't have those things and if I didn't learn to grow up really fast. The other thing is it's so easy when things aren't in your normal rhythm to fall out of shape vocally yourself. And that's kind of more what's happened to me. I think before all is said and done, I'll probably need some lessons with Miss Krause to get back into it.
Good.
I just want to let everybody know that I am studying classical voice during this pandemic. So I went back to my roots, and not that I want to be in the opera, although if someone asked me, but I know I don't cut it. You know, I am very humble about that. But I learned more as a teacher by being a student right now. It's like I am out of my league. So, you know, every single week it's like, open your mouth, open your mouth. So yeah, Richard Lissamore is a very good teacher, but I am really expanding my knowledge as just what it's like to be a student. It's a helpful perspective.
Yeah. Okay, Amy.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the honor of being here and included today. I think the pandemic taught us about the opportunities that we had ourselves, but also that we could offer to our students. With all their camps and programs and shows that they were going to be in getting canceled, we had the opportunity to bring those opportunities to them. So we were able to, you know, have master classes with someone that had sort of ended up being, as Jason pointed out, they were suddenly available. So before the pandemic, I may not have been able to just, you know, send an Instagram to a Tony nominee and be like, hey, could you do a masterclass for me? But now because they were available and there was an opportunity for me to be able to include that for my or provide that for my studio. That was a unique way of serving, sort of keeping these amazing artists with employment, but at the same time offering opportunities to a studio that they may not have been able to just run off to New York and do like before the pandemic. It also was able to show our students that we were committed to our craft. We were committed to still delivering amazing quality lessons online, just like they would have if they were in person. And we've all, as mentioned, we've all spent just an enormous amount of investment of time and money in creating good technology to try to minimize the latency, to try to have good lighting, good sound, and that was all because we were still committed to creating great experiences for our students, and no matter the delivery, it was still going to be the best product we could offer to our students.
Okay, we made the rounds, and because had a kind of an opportunity to kind of address that idea of some things that we've learned, and I also want to go a little bit into, while we're talking about this topic, a little bit into what we've learned about our students. I mean, several of you have mentioned that. But I know, some of us serve a wide variety of students, both socioeconomically. Obviously, the talent spectrum is all over the place as well. But particularly those, I'm interested in ways that also, you were able to reach those students who really needed help, who, didn't have the kinds of access that maybe some of your other students had, and how were you able to kind of serve them as well? Who wants to? Okay,
I'll dive in there. This has been really exciting through our studio since we've been able to go online. We just recently had a community member donate $600, which was enough to fully scholarship 4 elementary school students to take group violin lessons. And then I scholarshiped 2 more. So we have today, actually, we have our first group violin class for elementary school students. And we coordinated with the music teacher at a nearby school. And most of the students at this particular elementary school are on the, they get their lunch, the lunch program through the schools. And these are students who, the teacher said there would be no way that they would be able to afford private lessons. And they have not had orchestra since February. So in this particular school, they don't even get to be in orchestra until they are in, it's either the 5th or the 6th grade. So these kids had just gotten their school issued violins, and they got to play them, they got to play their little violins for not even 2 months. And then they had to stay at home, and the violins had to stay at the school. So the teacher arranged for the students to borrow the school instruments to take lessons through this group class through our studio. And so I created a thing on our website that's called Pay for a Pal. So for anybody that wants to donate, whether you're in our community or you're outside of our community, it will allow us to offer really high quality music training for students that would not be able to afford that. And in a similar vein, we were able to restart our adult day choir. And I say age 55 plus, I would say most of our adult singers are in their 70s and 80s. We have had a 92-year-old in that group when we met live, but we just started doing the day choir for seniors online. And so we've got like 12 people showing up and, teaching them how to do the Zoom and how to mute your microphone. Just find that little thing that looks like, it's called an icon, and you just, so that's really been wonderful. So it's been a great opportunity.
I know Kelly and I discussed a little bit about access in the email exchange. You want to share a little bit about that, Kelly?
Yeah, thank you for asking. This has been a very different year for me in terms of access. The recruiting where I am right now, the pattern of recruiting has changed a lot because private teachers, independent teachers are not allowed into the school buildings at all. So though I really haven't lost a lot of students, I didn't gain many this year. Normally, and the school district I work with right now, doesn't have a pattern of offering scholarship students. So my pattern has been usually I identify who needs scholarships and I offer quietly scholarships within the studio to students that I know are struggling. I am, as Alan and I have discussed, I feel so strongly about the need for us as an industry to identify students who cannot study due to financial constraints in whatever way that manifests itself, and provide for ways for them to study. I think that not only has to come in the form of lessons, but also in the form of the mentorship that guides students into collegiate studies should they want to pursue. I worked with a school for quite a while where I worked with students like that. And I was a student like that. So it's probably where a lot of my passion about that comes from. But I was astounded in that experience as an adult teacher to see that it wasn't as simple as here's your lesson, here's the money, here's the application, here's the funding. There's so much more to it than that when you're dealing with family issues, and when you're dealing with generational issues and economic issues and just so many things. So it's just, for me, there's just so much of a heart, and I think for many of us, to see us be able to reach the student that wants to study. But it's such a more multi-layered and multifactorial situation than here's your lesson, here's your track, here's your music, here's your access. Now let's go. I so wish I had a solution. I actually explored one time figuring out how to build a not-for-profit company and got totally overwhelmed about it, to begin to address how you might try to solve or begin to try to even figure out how to build the ongoing, deeper future access. And it broke my brain, because I found it to be such an incredibly deep issue, more than just providing the funding for the lesson for a time period. Sorry, that's a Debbie Downer answer, but
Really. But I think
that's what I
it's
found.
true that it's kind of the next challenge. I think as we seek to try to create equity and promote diversity, we have to kind of keep the doors open way down at the bottom of the profession. I mean, way down at the age bottom of the profession, because that's where the passion is built. And there's so many barriers that you just allude to that aren't just the artistic barriers. They're the family members that don't value the arts, as we were talking about earlier, and that, and so that students who are really passionate, they're overcoming that and overcoming just all the other barriers that are before them in life sometimes. And so in diversifying our profession of teachers as well,
Yes.
it's the same, it comes down to the same kind of issue at the very, bottom age range of a profession, about even identifying those students, early on, who got, they just taught their whole, freshman choir in high school this anthem, or they, and these kinds of things, so that we're beginning to kind of pull some of these people into the teaching profession too, not just the performing profession.
Can I add to that?
Oh,
Yeah.
please go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Kelly, you brought up a great point. And I used to work for an incredible nonprofit in Atlanta, Georgia called the Atlanta Music Project, where we taught private lessons. They had an orchestra side and a voice side as well. And one of our big things that we worked with was this idea of building community around singing. It's about changing the culture of the arts in the community because we ran into that same problem. Ours was a tuition-free program with excellent training and free lessons for instruments and for voice. And we would take the students and they would perform all over the state, perform for political representatives. They would perform in places that they just never dreamed of. It's an incredible program. If you get a chance, you should look it up. But that was one of our core missions, is to help change the culture around music and the significance of students that have talents and being able to point those talents out early, talk to parents and nurture them, teach them how to nurture those talents. But really a lot of the work, I think, has to happen around the culture and building a culture, explaining why music is important, explaining why music has function in our society and how your child or your niece or nephew or grandchild can be a part of that function.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, Jason and Melissa, how have, since you, of this group, your clientele is a lot more professional singers and in many ways. And so how has the fact that, a lot of your clientele has been severely economically impacted themselves, how has that impacted your studios, and how have you managed to maintain those relationships with your students who may not be able to afford lessons like they did before when they were working regularly? Go ahead, Jason.
Well, not to make light of it, but a lot of them have more time to study. So that's been interesting. It's this is just a personal aesthetic thing for me, but I'm not one of those teachers that subscribes to the idea that if you could do something else, then you shouldn't sing. And I find that the modern opera singer is quite versatile, and they have found ways to keep their personal standards up when the stage isn't necessarily an option. And that's been very interesting to put it simply, to see singers who are constantly on the road, sometimes 10 months a year, figure out how to reward themselves without that outlet. And it's been okay. And if I can just take a few seconds to really compliment the opera companies where I'm on faculty of young artist programs for keeping things alive. Wolf Trap they kept the summer. They had a beautiful program last summer, partly virtual, partially in a bubble. The young artists at Minnesota are on the ground doing their work. At Pensacola, they're doing it. Nashville, which is a great company, in addition, has supplemented this year with a program that I'm very happy to be a part of. It's the Big Blue program, the Big Blue Initiative, which is in sponsorship with traditionally HBCU, Tennessee State, and also Fisk, to get out there and go after one of the biggest issues I find as someone who grew up in Baltimore and was a minority in his high school, which is the game of visibility. And visibility right now, if you think about a regional opera company that may think about this as kind of startling, 12 performances in a year, like opera performances, an opera company that does, if they do 4 shows a year, 3 performances, that's 12 a year. And if they have a 2,000 seat theater, do the math, how many people in a year can come? Think of how many people can see these artists with this medium. And this medium shouldn't be just apologetic, but as an opportunity to build visibility so that when we're back on our feet, visibility isn't a foreign thing. And it's been really great to find ways to do that. And I just wanted to say that opera companies have been doing a wonderful job with this. And that brings me a lot of pride. And yeah, but just to repeat something I said before, the great equalizer of this is that You know, I work with people just coming out of academia, getting into their young artist program, and people, you know, singing at the Met, and everybody's in the same boat, which has something Kimberli said that just, you know, it got to me and it'll stay with me the rest of this day, is going back to why you fell in love with this in the first place. And everyone's been forced to do that. And that's the thing about athletics. Every day the work is new. It's not accomplished. You know, you just start over. And but I would say if everybody in this room and everyone watching can think about today, what are you doing to build visibility of people who aren't represented in our industry? Now's a good time to do it because everybody can look at their phone and see an artist for free. So let's take advantage now.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's great.
Yep.
Melissa?
My mind is so full of ideas listening to all of you. So thank you, Alan, for putting this on, because I just realized that there is a way to tap the overall kind of generic generosity of artists that are more fortunate, to have them contribute to a fund, a scholarship fund, just to keep this thing going. That's a great idea. Thank you all. Never even thought of that, but it's a very good idea. And it brings to mind, like, during the pandemic, I became a daily, I'm a subscriber to Metropolitan Opera on demand. So this, on demand servicing, it's happening in all industries. But the problem in the music on the radio industry part of it is that the income for the streaming is all going into basically one pocket. So there is a tremendous amount of income that is generated by the performing rights societies that monitor these, the royalties, but it's all rigged. And it was rigged before the pandemic, and now that is like somebody's getting really rich, and it's not the person who's making the content. So I'm very much aware that there is some political stuff that needs to happen, because we're all streaming and online now, and the regulatory organizations that deal with that are not up to speed yet. And so there's going to be a revolt of artists against the labels that are taking all their money in the streaming income. There's going to be stuff that's happening. And with regard to opening it up to like more people, before the pandemic started, I used the webinar function on Zoom to create group classes. So I have an 13-hour survey class about voice. It happens over 3 weeks, and there's 3 sections of this class, and it's somehow I managed to organize the information so that they have like an idea of where to get started, and then if they want to pursue it further, they can. And I think that it's not very expensive, and Zoom, if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I'd be happy to show you how I did the payment thing, and but it's growing. It's growing, and I'm that's what I see. It's growing. I just want to hit up some of these rock stars for some bucks for scholarships for students who can't afford stuff. I think it's a great idea.
Amy,
There
did
was
you
a
want to?
question about how do I handle tax-wise, how do I handle donations that people make? And if someone makes a donation on the Pay for a Pal on the website, I have a disclaimer there that says, please note that donations are not tax deductible. However, I will say if someone comes to me and they want to make a larger donation, I can have them donate to a local arts foundation, and then which is a nonprofit, and then the arts foundation can pay my studio for those students for those lessons. So there is a channel, kind of like Kelly. I have enough on my plate without making a nonprofit. I did make a nonprofit organization once for Tri-Cities Painted Pianos, and it was a short-lived project. And I mean, you have to have a board and you have to have it's very complicated. And so I just chose to say, if you choose to give from the generosity of your heart to help young musicians take lessons, then it is not tax deductible. And the woman who donated recently, she goes, "Oh, I'm fine with that."
Great. Amy?
I was just going to say, kind of going off what Melissa was mentioning, I think the accessibility has been made easier. Maybe this is jumping to some of the things we hope to stay, long term, is the accessibility of professional development and classes coming to our students. If perhaps they're a parent that can't leave young children, or a caregiver for somebody else, they can't go someplace for a week, but they could, like for the NATS conference over the summer, or they can and take the class being delivered virtually. I think that's one of the ways accessibility has helped during this time. We've made it deliverable to someone who may not have been able to travel, and then also for our studios, making asynchronous lessons accessible. Or if they didn't have a quiet place, or they couldn't sing during the day because they had parents working from home, they had to wait some other time. Making that was another way of accessibility easier. You can do an asynchronous lesson with different apps and things like that.
Yeah, great. Well, let's pivot and talk a little bit about what everybody thinks their summer and fall is going to look like. I know some of you, have had a history of taking the summer and having, concentrated camps or workshops for some of your students in the summer, in past summers, in addition to some of the normal regular year teaching. And then we, obviously we can kind of project to what we're all thinking about as we move forward, hopefully toward the emergence from the pandemic. But as you're thinking about it today, what is your summer looking like, and what do you think some things we should look forward to for the fall? Dana?
Yeah, I'll speak up. I am really looking forward to taking some time off this summer, because for me, this pandemic has resulted in constant lessons. Where there was once a time when our students would cancel because they had a choir concert, or they forgot the soccer practice, or so many cancellations, nobody cancels anymore. So every day is the same day. So I am really looking forward to taking this summer off, or taking some weeks off, and just decompressing, and hopefully maybe we can have a little bit of getting back out and traveling a little bit, I'm hoping. But for me, also going forward, I know Kelly, you said you can't wait to get back. Now, see, I just moved, and so I actually had this wonderful opportunity because of all this to keep all of my old students. I've been able to gain more students. I actually work with clients and voice teachers. I have clients in Australia, and I have students in California, and it's so great. So I'm planning on staying online. I am going to be fully online, and I hope, Melissa, this latency thing, we're so hoping. I'm like, I love that. Yes, you're right. We can get people to the moon, but we cannot seem to make the latency thing in a voice lesson without having all of this. But anyway, I'm hoping as we move forward, the technology will advance with our minds and our brilliant people that are out there. But anyway, so I'm staying online, and that's just, I like it. And I think that in time, just like right now, if I were to go back to in person, there's gonna be a lot of things I'm gonna miss about my online experience, and it might just be a wash. So anyway, that's my plans.
I know, I think this whole idea of everybody's been in a constant planning mode. I think that's one of the things that wears us down too. We've got 8 different plans, contingency plans for a contingency plan for this and this and this, and that. I know I'm certainly looking forward to kind of a little bit of relief from that. Having 1 or 2 options that I have to worry about, and not something for every possible change and how the data might change. I know some of the summer opera programs are adapting in ways. Some of them have chosen to stay more online this summer. Others are creating some bubbles to try to work with, you know, a small group of artists that they bring in. And so some of those things are happening this summer as well. And then there's that aspect of, you know, some of the things we picked up during, you know, during the pandemic that are, you know, new apps, new ways of helping students acquire skill, and that, you know, just have been so refreshing in many ways. You know, they've actually facilitated our work in ways that that they didn't before. And so I know Amy mentioned a few of those in our chat, but
I'm seeing a new trend too here in New York with coaches and teachers. Rapid testing is available here pretty easily. And so if you have a coaching session, they may ask you to get a rapid test the day before you come in, and kind of isolate the day that after taking the test. So that is something I feel like I'll see more of, at least here in the city, because testing is so easily available and free. So I think that might be more common.
mhm. Good. What else people want to add to that? Yes, Anna.
It's actually grown a bunch as far as how many students and how much staff I've got since the pandemic started, because we adapted well. And I'm actually looking forward to putting up drywall and opening some new physical locations when it's safe to do so, so all those teachers have a place to work. I think if I can require vaccination before they start working in person, I probably will, because I don't want to be part of the problem. But yeah, no, I look forward to actually getting to say hi to people and bring my employees donuts in the morning.
Yeah, that's, I think that whole aspect, I was talking with someone the other day who's an admitted hugger, you know, and so, you know, they're just like, I can't wait, you know, and then of course, I have other friends who are definitely not huggers, you know, and I live in the South and there's lots of huggers in the South. And so if you're not a hugger in the South, you're in the minority. And yet, you know, there's going to be this jerk reaction constantly I see coming, you know, in the summer and the fall as vaccination becomes more, you know, there's still going to be this hesitancy, people going for the hug, but then having second thoughts about it. And actually, I think the people who are not huggers are going to be appreciative of that, you know, because it gives them an opening to say, well, I'm not really a hugger, you know. So it's kind of interesting, some of the conversations I'm hearing from different corners about things like that, you know, that we're looking forward to in some ways, but then other people aren't necessarily looking forward to some things coming back. Cynthia?
I did the opposite of what Anna did. She's talking about, you know, drywall and expanding her physical space. I just cut my physical studio commercial rental space in half by doing a long-term venue rental to another arts organization to take over my classroom concert space, which we were also using as a teaching space during the day. So I'm back down to having 3 teaching studios and looking to the fall when maybe we'll be doing some in-person lessons or hybrid. There are only 5 of my current 13 faculty, which is including me, who would actually be doing some teaching in the physical building. And all of the other faculty, either I hired them as remote teachers or they are teachers who were teaching in the building and they have moved. I've had 2 teachers who relocated out of town and they said, please, I want to continue to teach for the studio. Can I teach online? I said, absolutely. And the trumpet teacher realizes that he really likes teaching at home because he has his massive jazz vinyl collection. And Skylar, I love you, but it's really nice to be teaching singing lessons and not have trumpet next door.
One of the things, Cynthia, before we move on, and when we were having a previous conversation, I was really impressed with the solution you had to being in a community that is not diverse, but wanting to provide diverse perspectives to students in your community. Can we talk about that just a little bit?
As we've all been exploring more diversity and inclusion, I looked at it two different ways. That within my community, I mean, there's actually very little diversity within my community. But so I don't have control. I can't like import new people to where I live. But what I can do is create a diversity through my faculty. And so I have been very intentional about that, and just I can't make sure that all of our students don't, let's just say, look the same, but I can certainly add diversity through the faculty. And I would say the other way that I can add diversity is by finding more ways that I can serve we have a very large Latino Hispanic community here in Eastern Washington. There is a long tradition of agricultural work. And so I feel like that's the part of our community that has just been completely out of reach to my studio, because those students they can't afford lessons. There's not, as Kimberli was saying, there's not a culture of music being this very important thing and feeding that creativity. And it's new to the families as well. And so one of the ways that I've been able to address that, and I'm going to go lean into that even more, is by having Carolina Botero, who is a teacher from the Seattle area. She did an 8-week group voice class, and it was Canto 101. I mean, it was all in Spanish language and bilingual, and she taught the whole class, in both Spanish and English. All of the song repertoire was Spanish language, everything from classical and folk songs to Mexican pop music. So we are going to do that again. So just trying to be creative and be more aware of who's out there.
Great. Yep, Jason.
I just wanted to riff for a second on the term inclusion. That inclusion isn't exclusively a passive thing, and it's not always about identifying an underrepresented community and saying, let's put a seat at our table for them. Sometimes we need to figure out how to earn our seat at that table. And that means that we have to think beyond just saying, the door's open, come on in if you'd like. But how do we open that door for us? What if we're the ones that need to be included? And I think that thought process allows us to come up with more creative and fair ideas. And I hope we keep that discussion alive when we're all not on here. And I just wanted to make one funny comment that's been coming up a lot about this platform is I live with a pretty successful bass baritone, so I get to do some live lesson stuff. But I cannot tell you, I cannot wait to teach and not see myself while I'm doing it. And I'm telling you, it's going to be really strange to get back to live auditions and not be like, and I really can't wait to not see myself teach ever again. That's all.
That's a good thing to look forward to. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Anna.
If going twice is kosher, that is. One, it's cool to have another Washington person in the room. I'm a lot closer to Portland, so different landscape. Another thing, like, I've been really fortunate with how diverse our staff is. So I'm looking forward to in working with more people internationally, because we speak so many languages at True Voice. So I look forward to working with more people that speak German and speak Turkish and speak French, abroad or otherwise, because we have teachers that are fluent in those languages, myself included. So I think that'll be pretty cool.
Anna's, although she has a very diverse practice, she's also really well known and in the community for her service to the transgender community. And I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about how you've kind of developed that kind of niche, I guess you could say, in your business.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep this as short as I possibly can, because I could go on way past our time. But when I was coming out as transgender, I felt like I didn't have a lot of heroes. And I was really stumped with the what am I going to do with the voice thing. I studied as a Helden tenor. And so through additional training with teachers more knowledgeable and experienced on the subject matter than I, and working on my own voice and working with other people that had done the same within the pedagogical sphere, ended up putting together a pretty robust program for how to train transgender people to change not only their speech, but their singing voice as well. And that's not just voice feminization, which is what everyone thinks of. Because if you're a trans woman, your voice doesn't really change from hormones like trans men or trans masculine people can. But there's people of all different gender identities and expressions that have unique vocal goals for their speaking and singing. And so we've worked really hard on figuring out how to best serve those people, for one, and two, hiring teachers that are part of the community themselves and not only have their degrees in pedagogy and performance and things, but have done it and use themselves as a guinea pig, which is the ultimate learning experience. And we will be starting a foundation, hopefully in Q4 of this year, to help transgender people pay for lessons with us.
Great. Excellent. Yep. That's good work. Well, as you know, the other thing I think that we've all picked up, and some of us more than others, probably on this screen, is that I'm sure we've all adjusted not just the method by going online, but how has the idea of a 30-minute lesson or an hour lesson changed for you? Because I know some of you, like myself, are, we've taken advantage of some of the things like Marco Polo and some of the other kinds of technologies where we can, our students can send things, how about this, to us, and we can comment on them back. So how has your teaching changed because of that? And maybe some of you haven't changed in that way, and that's certainly fine. But I know I found myself spending much more time with my students as a result of that, because I've had the feeling that I want to serve them. And I want to find these ways for us to stay connected as much as possible. Yes, Dana.
Oh, I just unmute myself. So I think I mentioned that. So last spring, when we were going to do our end of the year recital, it became clear that we weren't going to be having an in-person recital. So I was preparing my students for, sending videos and putting together a video. So it was then that I really kind of discovered this asynchronous kind of teaching, because I realized that I kind of needed to see what they were making. And so I said, hey, send me a video of what you're thinking, and I'll give you some feedback. And that just opened up this whole new, whoa, this is amazing. Like and that whole, latency problem, when you're hearing their video, now you're hearing them, right? You're hearing them in a really different way than you are on Zoom. So that was really great. And so from that now, I have found that I'm trying to not teach I teach like semester based now instead of hourly lesson, and doing, okay, you're paying for, okay, you've had 4 lessons and okay, you missed one. So, I'm out of that now. I'm doing semester based, and they get so many weeks to get in so many lessons. And I just tell, I put it in my outline of what they're getting. And so they get that now. They get this opportunity to do asynchronous lessons. And now, before I used to have my students take their notes or whatever. So now I am kind of taking notes for them. They're also required to take their own notes, or if a parent is assisting a young child, the parent is taking notes. But I'm taking more notes now, and I email them to all of my students. And so now it's so great because several of my students are taking the opportunity to email, especially my older students that are, and I teach ages 5 to 13. Primarily, I have high schoolers and I have even avocational adults, but the bulk are those children. And so I think those kind of tweens and teens are taking more ownership. They are emailing me what they practiced. So like this morning, I got an email all of a sudden, from somebody that what they practiced, and they put in there. And then it gives me that opportunity to just shoot them back a message saying, oh my gosh, you practiced 3 days in a row. That's so awesome. I can't wait to hear you in your lesson. Or, somebody might say, I was singing this and I felt this. And I'm like, hey, why don't you try this? So we're having this wonderful opportunity now to, just interact in a different way than we ever did before. And I don't think if we weren't online, it would have taken us a lot longer to get to this discovery of this. So I'm excited to hear what other people have to say about this.
Yes, Amy.
I kind of noticed for a particular student, I was getting texts and emails and Marco Polos all the time, and I was sort of like, now should I make them book an entire lesson to respond to these, or how can I sort of start acknowledging that we need boundaries, but that they have a lot more time to think about this now, I guess. And so for my studio, I was able to craft a package that looks different than the traditional, here you have a lesson a week and we pay by the month. Well, then I was able to craft, like, you can have 2 regular lessons, but then you can have, access to Marco Polo and text and email throughout the rest of the time. And that particular case worked well because the traditional weekly lesson is hard for them to commit to and to schedule, but they really did like checking in throughout the time. And so I was able to sort of say, okay, what do my clients maybe need that's not the traditional lesson standard, but I'm not answering them, day and night. And so in that case, that worked out. So able to craft, got flexible and said, all right, some students don't need the weekly lesson, but they want more than just that drop in every month or so. So anyway, in that case, is a way, I guess, the studio can make asynchronous lessons work, but at the same time honoring your own time restraints too.
Kelly?
I haven't done asynchronous so much that way. For many reasons, a lot has to do with the way just the scheduling works and the activity level of the students and their ongoing needs. I think also it has to do with the fact that I'm also a licensed certified speech pathologist, and at any time, a quarter or a third of my students are in some form of vocal rehabilitation, vocal retraining. So I haven't used that, but I've become a huge fan of video and screen share. So when we're in prepping for anything in particular, which it seems like, Amy, we're in Texas, aren't we always prepping for something? Whenever we're prepping for anything in particular, I have them send me what I call draft videos, and I'll skim or watch through them. And then when we get to their lesson, we'll watch them together and talk about what we see. I'll screen share, and we talk about what we see, what we're hearing vocally, what we're seeing theatrically, and we'll pretty much just analyze the performance together, share notes together, and then begin to reframe and restructure and reevaluate what needs to happen from that standpoint. And I find it just totally fascinating to watch these young people who can be as young as 13, she's my youngest, and as old as 18 or 19, watch themselves, we don't usually sing carrying a watermelon. We don't usually get stuck this way, just do the things that young people do that I can tell them about. But when they watch themselves with me do it, how quickly they can remediate and modify and make other choices. So I'm really just loving that. Send me a video, let's screen share, let's watch, let's redo as a format for teaching right now.
Right. I know I've also found it really helpful for diction. I just say, we'll go over it in the lesson, but of course they need to work on it on their own. And if it's a week later and they haven't, we're kind of going over the same things, I'll just say, okay, send me your Italian diction on Thursday, and they'll send me a Marco Polo, I'll comment on it just a little bit maybe. And then, but it's nice to see that progress a little bit, inch by inch sometimes, before the next lesson too.
I offer Marco Polo polos to my students who choose to do that. And I'd say it's less than half, but the students who take advantage of that are the ones that are really making progress. And we can, within the weekly lesson, and I still do weekly lessons in a semester format, we can break things down into little chunks, and then I can say, okay, now you stitch that all back together. Send me a Marco Polo of you singing the whole song or the whole first verse, and then I can still comment it from the Marco Polo. But in addition to that, the other thing that I've been able to offer as an expanded offering, and I think I did this for my mental health as much as anything, starting back in March, I added a Saturday song share on Zoom. There's no charge. Anybody in the studio can show up. So we typically have anywhere from, 6 or 7 people to 20 show up on a Saturday, 12 to 1 o'clock, and Pacific time. So we've even had our teachers from different time zones pop up. I've had alumni. Kimberli, we've had alumni show up to a Saturday song share. It is like super, super casual. It's not a master class. It's not a clinic. It's certainly not a recital. It's very casual. And it's like, who wants to sing something? And I find myself going back to those songs that are just heart songs. I usually don't sing anything classical, but I might sing a Disney song. I don't know.
Great. What about the issue? I know I've seen a lot of discussion about this lately, and of course, many of us have been dealing with this the whole time. But that issue of a student, singing to you over Zoom or whatever technology you're using, and really not singing as if they would sing in your studio, that aspect of technology and maybe the small room they're in or whatever. I find this a problem, of course, more with my kind of opera students who I'm trying to get to kind of get ready for roles or, get ready for a performance on a stage, for instance. But what kinds of tools have you been using in your teaching to kind of get at that? Because I know we all have that sense of they're holding back, and we really we know that if they will just sing out and fully support and sing as if they're in the hall, that everything will be easier many times. Yeah, Melissa.
I think that the microphone is part of the issue, because it's, especially in classical singing, the microphone classical singing is too loud for a microphone. Microphones don't like that. Microphones like air. They don't like, glottal closure. So there's an entire pedagogy thing about, singing in light mechanism, everything. So, because of the microphone, that's how technology changes things, because it's a nice sound and the microphone makes it acceptable, but you disappear live. So, but my biggest challenge is ear training. Ear training. It is so, when I have somebody that is not developed musically, I find myself now referring them to Kate Baker's vocalmusician.org, which is a course of recorded lessons where they can make a better attempt at developing their ear, because that's a really important part of what I do, is that ear thing. And the Zoom thing makes it really difficult. It's because the piano and the voice itself, they're not, coming together. So that's what I wanted to say. Ear training is still a problem. Zoom.
Kelly?
Couple of thoughts on that. You ask about how to get them to perform for the Zoom meeting camera. I think one thing that I found that I have to help some of my students navigate is the space in which they choose to take their lessons. I have one young man who likes to take his lesson in the corner of his bathroom, but when he gets ready to try to perform, he's too confined. So that's one reason for the videos. Send me a video before your next lesson, film it where you're actually going to be. So in a couple of cases, I've asked them to move to a place that is more like a performance space, and also figure out how to get your camera up here, because sometimes we have to navigate those things. So I think that negotiation of where can you go that's like a performance, and also navigate where your camera is. We can sometimes order music stands, tripods, and things to navigate that. Often, just because of the relationship I have with most of my students and their age range, I could look at them and go, dude, are you gonna do that if you're on a stage? Really? Can we try that again? And that's really about all it takes to get them to crack up and do it again. I have found that one of the things I will retain in our hopeful post-pandemic times, I didn't realize how much my playing the piano while we did vocal training exercises covered up pitch bubbles. So now that I have to play and you have to sing back, and I have to play and you have to sing back, we hear our own pitch bubbles, and we have to do greater tuning exercises. So I have found that even my students who struggled with a lot of tuning are so much better tuned, grammar tuned in the past several months than they ever were before, because I can't play while they sing. And so I found that the ear training of even some of my problematic pitch matchers has greatly improved, simply because I had to take my hands off the piano. So for that performance, videos, humor, space management. There's a question for the panel about sharing videos over Zoom being problematic. How do I get that tech to work? I ask them to send me the video ahead of time. And then if your Zoom is updated and you go to screen share, there is an optimize video for broadcast or optimized video box, and there is a share sound box. When I have checked both of those, I don't have any trouble. The students don't report any trouble. So that's my only answer to that.
Update your Zoom.
Yeah.
How many times can we say that?
And also if your student is using a school issued Chromebook, I'm sorry, there's not much you can do.
Yeah, that's problematic for sure. I've had the luxury of using SoundJack in my teaching, which is a low latency solution, and I'm basically having lessons as good as live. But we're just in 3 different rooms, the pianist and the singer and I, and exactly what Kelly said. When I wasn't doing that, the reliance on the piano that I had in my lessons, even though I'm an absolutely terrible pianist, my students are actually glad that I'm not doing that, probably. But that sense of what we're covering up in lessons, is really evident. And so that's one thing I've carried over, even though I've gone, I use SoundJack and I have a relatively live situation. When I'm warming up students, I'm just playing a chord and letting them go now. And I've really found that as a permanent change for my teaching, my personal teaching. What are some other things you all hope to carry forward, that some of you mentioned a few of those, into post-pandemic teaching times. Yes, Dana.
Something that I really hope will carry forward is auditions and competitions online, especially because I guess maybe that's greedy of me because I'm going to stay online. But again, I've said, I just moved here to New York from Michigan, and I am in 3 different chapters now in NATS. And so it's so exciting. My Michigan singers are actually competing in the NATS we have a new Long Island chapter, Nassau, Suffolk, Queens. And so my students are so excited to be able to compete with singers in New York. They just are like, oh, and so it's just really exciting. And so I don't know if any of them are listening to this, but I'm shouting out to them, please, because next year I don't think they're going to want to drive in the middle of February to New York to come and do a vocal competition. But I hope things like that, maybe even NATS might even consider having an fully online chapter that maybe just houses something like that. So anyway, just throwing that out there.
Good.
That's what.
Amy, did you?
Yeah, I hope that we can continue the accessibility to amazing artists to study with ourselves and for our students. My collaborative partner and I have been able to, coach with Christine Gorky this whole time, and I've been taking a really great professional development from Amelia Rawlings-Bigler and Heidi Moss and a bunch of other NATS big names because it was so accessible. So I hope the accessibility of performances, as Dana was mentioning, continues. Also that we allow ourselves to not go back to the barriers of location, that you can still take, if you have an ideal client wherever in the world they are, and you can help someone that way, then we can still make it happen. We don't have to be confined to just a radius of a certain mileage or something like we might have in the past. And so those are a couple of things that I hope we can hang on to.
I totally agree with that. Not limiting my studio to this 900 square foot building, but now that I've been able to expand far outside the brick and mortar, I want to continue that sense of community. So whether it's for the students who will eventually be taking some lessons in person, or the majority of the students who will be online, to just find ways to keep us all connected. So it's been really liberating, and I just love the freedom from the location and the brick and mortar.
Yes, Joseph.
I was just going to say my teaching is almost exclusively as a traveling salesman. I maybe teach 5% of my lessons in this room, and the rest of the time I'm going to singers. And nothing will really, it is a necessity for us to hear in a unamplified acoustic and professional operatic voice. However, what I think I'm looking forward to adding, which seems so silly that we didn't do before, will be more in between work. So if I think of a successful soprano that I work with, who I may get to see with sometimes a 3 and 4 month break in between, not because they can't afford the lesson or we don't want to, but just they're busy on another continent, we can more effectively fill in the live visits now. So I'm hoping that's something that holds up. And if anybody has any suggestions, by the way, one of the things I find hard on this platform is to recreate adrenaline. And so I'm a judge for the Met National Council auditions, and I had several singers in the feedback say, I forgot what it was what it was like to sing nervous. And I don't know how to replicate that. I mean, ask them to watch a horror movie while singing, I don't know. But I look forward to working with the nervous voice. I've never sung as well on stage as I do in the shower. I know that. So if anybody has any smart or legitimate ideas, I'm open to those.
Yes, Kelly.
One of the things, I actually have a semi idea for Jason here in a second. One of the things that I have really appreciated, and it's similar to what Amy said, is the approachability that has emerged within our profession. A year ago, we weren't all as approachable. A year ago, I was just a high school teacher in the DFW area. I'm still just a high school teacher and a speech pathologist in the DFW area. But now, with the pandemic and all of us in so many similar situations, we're just a bunch of people online making up things as we go along, solving solutions, wearing the same pair of shoes. And so we're all much more approachable and much more shareable than we ever thought about being a year ago, no matter what our actual training or lot in life is. And I hope as doors open back up and we begin to walk through them, and whatever our new normal life begins to be, we retain that sense of professional approachability that we have now. Because I think it's created opportunities and shareability and information and accessibility that it would be a real shame if we lose as we go forward with all these things that we've gained and all these things that we've learned. So that's the thing that I really appreciate and I really hope. One of the things that I do for my anxiety management clients, Jason, that I don't know if it'd be helpful or not to create adrenaline, but some of my students that have true anxiety that they have trouble overcoming in performance, I have them run until they are breathless. And then I have them stop and try to harness that breathless energy and sing. You know, do you have any heart attack issues? That kind of stuff. Yeah, we do a little screener and all that, but most of them are young. But my neighbors had been used during live days of students running up and down the street and stopping and singing at the front porch. And when they can begin to harness that, then they can often begin to harness that same heartbeat and respiratory rate of the anxiety. I would think if some of your singers are having trouble creating that adrenaline feeling, if they do some physical activity to get their adrenaline up and then sing, or get their heart rate and their respiratory rate up and then sing on top of that, they may begin to feel that physical adrenaline that then they can try to mimic. They might try that exercise in reverse. I don't know if it would work, but I'd try it.
I think that's a great idea, and I think everyone in the room would agree, Kelly, that you were very cute for suggesting we're all wearing shoes in these. You said we're all wearing. I'm like, what? Thank you.
My shoes have straps on them right now, but we don't have to talk about that.
I know I'm in Miami, but I haven't put on shoes in a year. It's great.
Kimberly. Oh, unmute.
Technology, I tell you. This has been a great discussion overall, and I've learned so much. And I'm totally going to try that as a singer myself, the running and then trying to harness that energy, because I have the opposite issue with than Jason has seen. Those cameras make me so nervous. I would just rather be in a live performance on any day. I hope going forward, kind of what Kelly was saying, that at least in the classical world, I feel like there was a lot of stigma around digital performance and recording yourself, self-tapes, all those things. I look forward to this, or I've enjoyed the fearlessness in students recording and learning how to just get in front of a camera and do it. And I hope we take that forward as an area. And I also am really, really thankful. We touched on it a little bit, but the conversations that are happening around diversity and equity and inclusion. And I hope we continue that. I hope it's not just a fad and just kind of the cool thing to do right now, but that we are active in the choices that we're making. I love what Cynthia talked about with trying to reach out and have this Spanish language class that's going on in her community, looking for ways to, as Jason said, to invite, not just invite people to the table, get rid of the table, join another table, and just always be aware that there are systemic issues that are present, and how can I counter that systemic issue in the work that I do individually and in the work that we do as a community. So I hope we really continue to look at ways to expand our community, expand our audiences, and shed light on our own personal biases.
Great. Anything burning that somebody else wants to mention? I mean, I know there's something we've kind of peppered in some things we hope won't return from the pre-pandemic days, you know, with some of the things that we've talked about. But have we left anything on the table related to that?
Yeah, I think so. What I hope will not return is overscheduling. And I say that from my students. And I that will probably change once they're all back in school. They will be doing their dance classes and their soccer practice and basketball and all of that. But in this time when I think it was Dana was saying they've really just been able to focus on their music, we kept going, and it became a priority. And with a lot of my students, I don't think it was a priority before. It sort of came after, the other activities. But also, this is huge for me. I have really cut back on the number of students I'm teaching. I could easily slam through 10, 30-minute lessons in a day because I was teaching Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, and I chose to consolidate and just teach 3 days a week, but I was still teaching 30 students. So I have 15 to 18 students now. I teach no more than 6 lessons a day, and occasionally I'll have an hour lesson with an advanced adult. I have a hard stop at 5 p.m., and I've never done that before. It is so wonderful to actually go home, cook dinner, see my husband, watch TV. Yeah, I am going to be very reluctant to give that up and keep teaching till like 7 o'clock. I'm just not going to do it.
That's good. I think Dana mentioned to me something similar to that, this idea of, having a little more life balance, with our families, and that balance of being able to do some things like Cynthia's done, segment our days like a regular person, like everybody else who works 9 to, so, it's that, those real life things that really can make a difference in our work life and our personal lives, and finding those ways to balance those things. So that's really good.
I find teaching online takes a lot more energy. It's just more tiring. It just takes more mental capacity, which probably means I'm much more focused. But 6 lessons, I'm done.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Amy.
The pandemic, I think, has also taught us and our students that we have to be creative with our performance opportunities. That's been a reason to be thankful for NATS and for music teacher associations and individual communities and things like that. But I hope we don't go back to with the feeling that you have to have gotten into a young artist program or you have to have had a major role to have been successful. It's okay if you're making your own little Liederabends in your own communities or little Zoom recitals, and if that's sparking joy for you, then that's okay too. So I hope we don't lose the creativity of making performance opportunities for both ourselves and our students, and then just singing for the joy of singing it is okay too. You don't have to be achieving some sort of success, so to speak, as long as you're enjoying and as Kimberli said, sort of finding the root of why you love to sing in the first place, and then go ahead and do it. Don't be afraid to put a recital online, or just why not?
I think one of the things go ahead, Melissa.
I just hope that what we've developed in terms of technology out of necessity can become an aspect of bringing arts and education to a more affordable option for the public schools that do not make it a priority. It's one of my passions, arts and education. If I hadn't been a beneficiary of it, I wouldn't be who I am. And now that we have, Zoom technology and a way to organize this might work out really well.
I do. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things you've all just recently just kind of touched on. One of the things I worry about, and that is that post-pandemic, we will lose some of this kind of free-flowing communication, that's happened artistically and somewhat organically. I mean, none of us have had the time to watch all the things that have come at us. We could all spend weeks and going back to all the things we've missed watching that have come across our email or our social media pages. Hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I'm doing that. But it's whether I've watched it or not, seeing the energy of that come across, my desk in one way or another, just keeps reinforcing to me the vitality of our community and the vitality of the arts and what is happening all around us that we don't, what was happening before all around us that we didn't even see, artistically. And now we've been able to see that. And I hope that we will continue to see that, I guess is my point, that all these things kind of won't go back into the cracks and the crevices of the individual communities, but they'll maintain this connection and maintain these ways of being forward facing and out in the community and out in the greater, larger community in ways that they can. And I think certainly I know a lot of larger artistic companies are talking about these things, but I'm not so concerned about them. They're gonna find their way to transition and keep using some of the technology they've been using. I'm really more excited about the studios that are doing this, the independent studios that are doing this, the students that are getting together themselves and putting together videos and putting things out and sharing their art in a more free-flowing way, because I just think that is just going to really help us post-pandemically to allow the freedom and the creativity of individuals to thrive and flourish without so much constraint, of got to go to a hall, got to go to the theater, got to put on a performance. I can do it out here on my back porch. I can do it, 3 of my friends can come over and we can, have a whole concert on YouTube if we want to. And I think those are the things that are going to just really be great skill building opportunities for our students, I think. Any last words from any of you? Yep, Cynthia.
My last word is generosity. I have seen so much generosity during this time. And as you were talking, Nancy Boz popped into my mind, and I would like to publicly thank her because she donated the Spanish language version of her Singing 101 book. So her Cantar book, she sent me a box that I did not ask for. I said, I want to buy some of your books for these students because they were local, and I delivered them to their houses. She sent me a box of the books with an invoice that said 0 on it. And she included some Trader Joe's dark chocolate almonds because we don't have Trader Joe's here. So I just love this incredible community and generosity. I do not want to see that disappear.
That's great. Any other final words from folks? Well, I want to just thank you so much, first of all, for your generosity in being with us today, and the great, just wonderful work that I already knew you were doing, but and it's just been great to hear each of your stories about both your journeys through this time, but also the ways that your ingenuity and your creativity and the ways that you brought it to bear on your individual situations that have benefited so many young artists and older artists as well in our greater voice community. And one of the great things that I think certainly about NATS is the fact that we have this great community to call upon and discuss and call our friends for ideas and thoughts and bring them together in these kind of formats. So I want to thank you all for your work and look forward to hearing more about it as we move forward. And I want to thank our audience for being here today. Thank you for your questions. I think we tried to address all the ones that came to us. And until next time, keep singing and stay mad.